Welcome back to Pop Kitchen. This is Pantry Party, where we make food with ingredients you may already have in your pantry. I'm John Kanell, founder of Preppy Kitchen, and today we're making an easy breezy soda bread that doesn't need any yeast. It comes together in a snap, so let's get started. Before we talk about the dry ingredients, let's talk about the milk situation. This recipe calls for 1 3/4 cups of buttermilk, but you might not be able to find that at the market or just have it handy. So instead, let's just sour some regular milk. Take almost 1 3/4 cups, maybe minus a tablespoon or 2, and then add in about 2 tablespoons of white vinegar or lemon juice. You could even use cream of tartar. You basically want to add an acid to the milk. That acid will react with the baking soda and create all those leavening bubbles and make your bread rise. Give it a stir, and then just let it thicken up. It'll take a few minutes, but it'll be perfect when we're ready for it. Now let's go over the dry ingredients. So for this recipe, we'll be using 4 cups or 480 grams of all-purpose flour. In you go. I'm sifting it out of habit, but you do not have to sift. It's not a must. Okay, perfect. Love using a scale. It is so easy. To that flour, we're gonna add 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. It looks like this. You probably have it hanging around the kitchen. And then almost 1 teaspoon of salt. I wanna have some nice contrast for the bread. This is a nice sea salt, but you can use any kind of salt. If you use an iodized salt, I just wanna let you know, it's a little bit harsher of a flavor, but mixed in with everything else, you probably won't even know the difference. My 2-year-old twins, Lachlan and George, have been on a kick of raisin bread. They want raisin bread right now, but I can't find it at the market. So I'm gonna be adding some raisins into this soda bread, and I think they're gonna love it. Because it's a raisin bread, I wanna add a little bit more sugar. So we're adding in 1/4 cup of just plain granulated sugar. And now it's time to give this a sift. Sift it out. Whisk it up. We can set the scale aside now. And then we're gonna be adding in some cold butter, 4 tablespoons to be exact, but it's in the fridge right now. I'm gonna go get it. It's diced into small pieces because we're gonna be mixing this up by hand. Usually I do this kind of recipe with a stand mixer, but when you're making a soda bread, it's actually the easiest to just do it by hand. You can feel the different textures coming together and have more control. Here's my 4 tablespoons of butter cut into small pieces. Just sprinkle it in there, and we're gonna use our clean hands, and almost as though you were making a biscuit, you're going to mash up that butter. You wanna have kind of like small pieces of butter hanging out in this mixture. Okay, if you wanted to, you could use a biscuit cutter too, or whatever else. And if you really don't wanna use butter, you can skip it and just add a little bit more buttermilk as needed. It's actually really fun to do and kind of, it's very tactile. You can feel the butter in your hands. You're just smashing it with the flour mixture. For this soda bread, you don't want to overactivate the gluten because it's not a yeasted bread. You're using soda instead. And you just can't make the bread too tough because it'll contract back and it'll be kind of dense. Okay. That butter is worked in. I had a great time doing it. And you can see it's just like a nice crumbly mixture now. This is a perfect opportunity for us to deal with the rest of the wet ingredients. I'll set this aside for just a minute, and you have options. If you want to add any flavors in here, you could go ahead and add in a little bit of cinnamon, you could add in some nutmeg, you could add in some orange zest. In fact, I think I will be adding some orange zest in. Just get a little bit of zest off with a microplane or whatever else you like to use. And I'm gonna add this to the buttermilk. It's just gonna give us a little bit of a nice aroma in there. Just tap that into the buttermilk, and I can tell already, look what happened. It's totally thickened up, which is what we wanted. That acid reacted with the milk, and it's good to go. The last wet ingredient we have is 1 egg. We're gonna crack it right in. In you go. Just give it a quick mix. Okay. If you're using a stand mixer and you were doing this part with a paddle attachment, you would just drizzle in the milk while the mixer's running on low. We're gonna do this by hand, so I'm gonna make a little bit of a well and then pour in most of my wet solution. I don't know if I need all of it yet. Different flours absorb different amounts of moisture depending on protein content, et cetera, et cetera. So add in almost all the milk, and you can just reserve the rest for the very end if needed. Love the orange color of that zest coming through. I'm not gonna do this all by hand because it's gonna be crazy messy. I'll use a spatula to start off with. Just kind of like gently fold things in. You can see it's becoming a shaggy mixture right now, and that's exactly what we want. At this point, still pretty rough. It's totally not fully incorporated, but I will be adding in 1 full cup of raisins. I hope my boys will enjoy this. Normally when I make a soda bread like this, I like to add in some toasted pecans, some dried cranberries, some sultanas, and really like liven things up, but I'm keeping it nice and simple for them. I don't want to overwhelm their little palates. These recipes are pretty forgiving. You can add more or less ingredients as needed as far as fillings go. So if you wanted to add in like candied ginger, walnuts, so whatever you wanted to, it's probably gonna work out just fine. So I see I have like a little bit of this floury situation happening on the bottom. I might add in just a bit more of the wet mixture. Mix, mix, mix. And you can also see that my raisins are nice and distributed as well. So they're not all clumped together. Okay, one last turn and then I'm gonna dump this out. Onto a well-floured surface. Lots of flour, lots of flour. We're gonna dump our mixture out right now. Dump it out, sprinkle just a bit more flour on top. And now we're just gonna give it a couple folds, not really kneading it, but just let it come together. You wanna like double check the consistency's okay and just kind of just work it out a little bit. Okay, that looks nice. Again, if you were like kneading an actual yeasted dough, you would like knead, and eventually it would kind of come together, become a little silky on top, and your finger would bounce back. This is not that kind of dough. This is just gonna be like brought together, formed, and then we're gonna place it into the oven to bake. So as far as your vessel for baking, you have a couple options. You could just use a sheet pan, but this dough has a tendency to spread out and flatten a bit. If you wanted to keep it together like I do, you can cook it on a little cake pan. So use an 8 or 9 inch cake pan or a cast iron skillet, which is what I'll be using today. So I have a small cast iron skillet right here. It's probably about 9 inches. And I'm going to just plop my bread onto there carefully. Use a sharp knife or utility blade, whatever you have handy, even a pair of kitchen scissors, and just score a cross on top. The cross is going to control the expansion of the bread in the oven and also just make sure that the center cooks more evenly. This is a rustic bread. You don't have to worry about it looking perfect at all. The last step, which is optional, is just to give it a quick brush with either an egg wash or I'm just gonna use some cream today. You could even use the milk. Those give you kind of like a more golden top, which is always visually appealing. We're gonna pop this into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 minutes. You can check the center with a skewer. It should come out clean. You can even lift the bread out carefully and tap it. It should sound hollow on the bottom. That's how you know it's cooked through. Into the oven you go. And that's it. How quick and easy was that? I love soda bread and I know you will too. Hope you get to make this recipe soon and thanks so much for watching.